Okay, great. So, as Catherine said, my name is Cory Angeroth. I'm a hydrologist here with the U.S. Geological Survey in Salt Lake City, Utah. I am the data chief here is what my position is. So my job is that I'm responsible for and manage the group of technicians that collect the data in the field and enter the data in the database and ensure that the database is correct and all that kind of stuff. There's a position like mine in every state. So in whichever state you're in, there's somebody just like me that's doing the same thing for the USGS in that state. This talk that I'm going to go through today is one similar that I gave in the conference up in Snowbird last year. What's the name of that conference again, Catherine?
The National River Rally.
The National River Rally, that's right. This is also a talk that I give pretty much on a yearly basis here in Utah at the Utah Water Users Convention. And I kind of go through and just describe what data is available and how to find it on USGS web pages. Because this is a river type group, we'll focus more on the surface water type stuff. I'll briefly touch on groundwater type issues and also water quality issues. And as Catherine said, feel free to ask questions as we go along through this, or if there's something that you're really interested in that I didn't show or you want to be able to find, just ask, because there's probably other people that are looking for that as well. And there's about 3 or 4 different ways to get to the same piece of data. So I'll try to go through it here and help you along. So I guess before I get started, are there any questions about anything that people might have? No? Okay. Oh, that's my phone. Sorry. All right, so let's get started. First off, can everybody see what I'm showing here is the title slide. It kind of shows the Virgin River near Bloomington, Utah. And you should be able to see my pointer on there as well. And this is kind of a graph that shows a lot of stuff. This is kind of the basic graph that you're going to see for each stage or for each gauge throughout the country. And I'll show you how to get to this graph, but it shows several things. This one shows the instantaneous discharge throughout time for the last 7 days or so. This one actually shows it for the last couple of months. So this is the daily discharge. And those little red stars on there, those are points in time when we actually had a USGS crew on site making a discharge measurement. So those are helpful to see on there, because that way you know that at that point in time we knew what the discharge was. Between those points you just see the blue line, and that's where we're recording stage at the site, and we're using our stage to discharge relationship to determine what the discharge is. I got another call coming in here. All right, so also along the bottom here you see these gold triangles. So what those are the median daily discharge for this site, and based on 33 years of record. So you can see right there it says 33 years. So every site has pretty much a different period of record length, and it will tell you at the bottom of that, that way you kind of get an idea of really how long this site's been around and really whether that statistic is, how meaningful that statistic is. We really won't even show this on sites that have less than, I think it's 8 years worth of data. So let's go on, and I'll just kind of give you a brief description of what types of data are available. And now for Utah, and this varies from state to state, and I'll show you how you get this information. But for Utah, we have 147 near real-time sites in Utah, and we have historic data in our database for over 750 sites. I say near real-time because the way the USGS stream gauging program works for the vast majority of sites throughout the nation is that we use the GOES satellite to transmit our data from the field back to our database. The way that system works is we have a 10-second window every hour to transmit the data that we collect in the field. So we have a data logger in the field that collects data once every 15 minutes. So we have 4 data points within that hour. When that 10-second window comes up, it transmits those 4 values plus a redundant set of values in that 10-second window into the database, and then it's processed and displayed on the web. So it's near real time because it's updated on just an hourly basis. It's not updated instantaneously. Just moving on down, we have there was a note that popped up there to mention the call-in number. Did you want me to do that again? No? Okay. So for the sites in Utah, we have statistics on over 750 sites. We have peak flow data at over 600 sites. And every state, for engineering purposes or for determining flood frequency, recurrence intervals and stuff, it's important to have the peak flow data. A lot of sites or a lot of states used to have what we call the crest stage gauge network, where it wouldn't be a full discharge site. It would just record the peaks. And so that data is also available. We have a new thing that's called the individual data archive, or the IDA. And what that is that's the 15-minute data that we record and store in our database. We now make that available through the web. That's a relatively new feature. It's probably been around for maybe 2 years now. Before we would only make available the daily discharge data. If somebody wanted, like the unit, we call those unit values, the 15-minute values, we call them unit values. If somebody wanted those, they would have to contact us, and we would do a retrieval and provide those data for them. But now there's a web page where you can go and do your own retrieval on the individual data. We also have flood and drought information available on the web page. In groundwater, at least in Utah, we only have one near real-time site. And I'll show you a map that kind of shows the other real-time sites throughout the nation. We have continuous data for 110 sites here in Utah, and field measurements at over 15,000 sites. Utah is one of the probably better states in funding groundwater work, just because it's the second driest state in the nation. So Nebraska is also another site, and I'll show you a map that shows where we have real-time groundwater data available. And then for water quality sites, here we have 17 sites that are near real-time for water quality. Most of those are going to be temperature, conductance, pH, and dissolved oxygen. We have continuous data at 55 sites across Utah, and we have over 11,000 water quality samples of both surface water and groundwater. And again, these are all just for Utah, so if you multiply that out, you get to see that there's a significant number of water quality samples floating around for the nation, and I'll show you how to access those. So the next thing I'm going to do is just kind of go through what a typical USGS Water Science Center homepage looks like. Let me get that opened up. So, this is the page for Utah, and I'll just show you. Let's look at one from, I don't know, Minnesota. So you can see that it's pretty typically a similar look and feel from state to state. Most of them will have this map here on the top and the front that shows the current stream flow situation across the state. It's color coded based on sites that are above normal in the cooler colors and below normal stream discharge for this time of year in the warmer colors. There's also on the left-hand side, right over here, this data center. And we'll go through this data center kind of from top to bottom, because really that's where most of the data that you're going to want to access can be accessed from. So we'll just go back to Utah here. Another useful feature that you can access is called Water Watch. Water Watch is a national page that kind of shows a glimpse of what's happening in a national picture. You can access WaterWatch by either Googling WaterWatch, or if you go to waterwatch.usgs.gov, it'll take you to the WaterWatch page. Or if you go to just any of these maps and click somewhere out in the middle, not on one of the blue dots, but if you just click out in the middle, it'll take you to the WaterWatch site. Hopefully my internet access is behaving itself. So this is the WaterWatch site for Utah. We go to the waterwatch.usgs.gov site. It will pull up the WaterWatch page for the nation. And on this you can kind of see, just in a quick glimpse, where the flooding's happening in the nation, where the droughts might be going on, the current stream flow, and then you can also look at some past flow runoff. This one will, if we click on that, will allow you to go in and make a kind of a movie through time of the stream flow conditions throughout the country. I'll show you more on the WaterWatch page here in a minute. But on your state page, if you were just interested in wanting to know what's going on, you can see these black dots here. Black means that it's very high. We have a very large snowpack here in the mountains of Utah right now. Some sites are over 200% of normal for this time of year, and we're actually still accumulating. So we've got some really large runoff going on right now, and really, well, at least for this time of year, and it's really just the tip of the iceberg. But so if you were interested in what's going on, let's say if you hover over one of these dots, it'll give you the name of the site. So the Strawberry River near Duchesne is one of those black dots. If you click on it, it's going to take you to what we call the station page. And there's probably a lot of people using the network right now. So anyway, it's starting to fill in now. So on the station page, it's going to show you several things. For the most part, we'll start at the top and just work our way down. It's going to obviously give you the station name. The next thing down is this provisional data statement. So all of our data is provisional and subject to revision until we go through and approve that data. We're working on approving the data. It used to be that we would review and approve the data once a year after the water year, and so that approved data usually wouldn't be completed until February of March of the following year. We're doing something now that's called continuous records processing. We hope to finalize this data 3 times a year instead of once a year. And I'll show you how you determine if the data that you're looking at has been approved or if it's still going to be subject to revision. The next thing down is most of our gauges are funded cooperatively with a local water agency. For this particular site, this gauge is funded by the USGS in cooperation with the Utah Department of Natural Resources, the Division of Water Rights. A lot of them will have a picture of the site that you can click on, and it just pulls up a bigger picture of the site. We also have this button here that shows additional station information. If you click on that, it's going to give you the period of record. So this site, we've run this site continuously since 1968. Gives you drainage area, some information on the gauge. This is what used to be in what we would call the header information in our annual data report, the big books that USGS used to produce on a state-by-state basis at the end of the year that had the finalized data in it. Always had that header information at the top. That information is now available on the web, and I'll show that to you here in a minute. For this site, it shows that there are only 2 parameters available for this site, gauge height and discharge. Some other sites might have velocity available or water quality parameters available. You can display this in several different formats, in a graph, with stats, a graph without stats, a table, a tab-separated table if you wanted to pull the data out to put into a spreadsheet or some graphing program that you're interested in. And we can pull the data back for up to 120 days now. That's a relatively new feature. It used to be you could only pull it back about 30 days. So if we look at the last 120 days for this site, we'll see shows, assuming that it doesn't take forever to pull up. That's the bad part about doing this demonstration live. We're at the mercy of the network speed. Which this time of day is usually pretty busy. While we're waiting for that to pull up, there's in the upper right-hand corner here, there's some data categories. So, you know, you can get real-time information or some of the historical information by clicking up here, and you can also switch to different states just up there. So anyway, here it is for the last 120 days. And again, this is the graph that I showed you on the very first slide that I had there. Again, it shows the discharge on the y-axis, time on the x-axis, and the long-term statistic, which is the gold triangles, which for this site is 42 years. The red dots are where we've measured discharge, and so on. This one you can see a break in the record, and these kind of blue circles down here at the bottom, which mean that the flow at the station was affected by ice. This is an ice-affected station. You can see we have a red dot out here in the middle, but no blue line attached to it. When a station is affected by ice, the stage-discharge relationship that we use to determine or to calculate the discharge is no longer valid. So when this record is being worked and checked and reviewed, we will go back and we'll estimate this period of missing data through the ice period. And we base those estimates on discharge measurements that we make. So we know on this day we went out and we augured holes in the ice and made a discharge measurement. So we know that at that point in time, we know what the discharge was, and we'll base our estimates through time, making sure that we incorporate those measurements. And then we also have another plot here at the bottom that is the gauge height for this site. Some people are interested, particularly this time of year, on what the gauge height is because they know when it hits a gauge height of 7.5 feet or whatever that their house is going to get flooded. Another new feature that we have, well, let's start right here. So you can also create a presentation quality graph or a standalone graph by clicking on one of these two links here. And what that will do is it will create a standalone graph that you could then use in a presentation, or some people that are sophisticated in writing scripts and stuff go in and have a program that will go every hour or whatever, and it'll pull scripts for the sites that they're interested in. If you're a water management agency, let's say on the Strawberry River here, you could go in and have these updated on a continuous basis and display it on a monitor or something like that, so you know what's going on.
Thing again.
Is that a question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, this is taking too long to pull up, so I'm going to stop it. Again, that just pulls up a graph. A new feature that we have right here, you can see this link that says Water Alert, subscribe to Water Alert, a little question mark there. Water Alert is a new feature that the USGS has. It's been available for maybe a year now. It's really starting to get more and more use. You can get to the Water Alert page by either just Googling Water Alert, or if you go to any of the station pages, you can sign up to receive an alert via email or text message when certain parameters that you select are exceeded, and I'll show you how that works. So I'm just going to click on the little question mark here. It'll take you to the Water Alert introduction page, and this gives you a description of what Water Alert is. And it also shows you, at least it will when it pulls up here, a map of the United States. Our network is really slow today. Many government security protocols. Now we'll wait a little bit longer here for it to pull up. There you go. So it pulls up a map of the United States. You can zoom in to your area of interest, select a gauge of interest, and then you can sign up for the Water Alert for that gauge. Or if you knew that this was a gauge that's of interest to you, you can just click on this Water Alert tab here next to the question mark, and it will take you right to the subscription form for that page. So in the subscription form, you need to tell it what you want, whether you want a notification sent to your phone or your email, some information on the frequency, whether, you know, if you want to know every hour whether the threshold that you've identified is being exceeded, or if you just want to know once a day. It gives you some information about like really what's going on now to kind of help you decide what you want that threshold to be. So right now it says that the discharge at this site is 691 CFS. So if you happen to live along there and you know that, wow, this is as much as this channel can handle, I want to know as soon as it hits 700, then you can set up that alert. And then here are the threshold conditions that you can select. You can select greater than, less than, outside of a range, or inside of a range. You know, so if you knew that you really like canoeing a certain stretch of river when the flows are between 2,000 and 2,500 CFS, you could select that, and you could put in 2,000 and 2,500. Sign up for this alert, and you'll get an email sent to your computer or your phone when the flows are between that between those discharges. Also do it for, if we scroll down here, you can also do it for gauge height. So again, we have another Water Alert registration tab here that you can go in and sign up for when a gauge height is greater than or less than a certain gauge height. You might want to know less than if you were interested in a, I don't know, a fish passage study or something like that, that flows had to be above a certain gauge height in order to maintain fish passage. Any questions on Water Alert or anything that I've covered so far? Okay. Up at the top of the page here, of the top of the station page, you can see there's a pull-down menu that provides different types of data that are available for this site. So you can see you can get a summary of all the data. So if we click on that and then click Go, we're gonna hopefully get that to pop up. Okay, there we go. So for this site here, you can see we have daily discharge data from 1968 to the present. We have gauge height data from 1995 to the present. So the daily data, that's historical data. So if we click on that, so this is going to be the daily mean discharge information for this site. So if you're interested in, you know, retrieving this data and doing some sort of, you know, analysis on the data, this is how you would do it. Again, it pulls up just something similar to what we were looking at before. What we were looking at before was the instantaneous discharge. Now these are just the mean daily discharges. And here you can see a couple of different things on the graph now. You see a blue line, which is the mean daily, and then you see some spots of red within that, like right there. The red are the times when we had to estimate the daily mean discharge. It was estimated either due to ice or due to equipment malfunction or some other reason we had to go in and estimate it. You can also see along the bottom here we have a green bar and then a pink bar. The green bar is the period of approved data. So that's the data that has been collected, quality assured, reviewed, and approved. So that data will not change. So that data is no longer provisional. The pink portion of it is the period of provisional data that we haven't gone through yet and done the quality control and review process on. You can also see those orange circles again, which for this site mean that the flow at that station was affected by ice. If there was another reason, equipment malfunction or whatever, there would be a different color circle on there and the explanation would be listed below it. We can also get this in a table. So if we pull up a table of this data, and we can change the dates up here too to any date that you're interested in. Let's say we were interested in 2005 from April 19th to 2005. Well, let's say we were interested from January to June 19th, 2005. Now it's going to go in, retrieve the data from the database, and display a table. And what I want to show you on the table is just a couple of the other features that come out of the daily data table that pulls up here. Are there any questions on any of that so far while we're waiting for this to come up? No? Okay. So now we see a couple other things. Now this is the daily table, and you could get this out in a tab separated file as well that you could easily read into, whatever program you wanted. So now we see discharge and gauge height. Now you can see on the discharge there's an E and there's an A. And the gauge height there's an A as well. The E means that that day is estimated. So that day was affected by ice. It's, in the middle of January. The A means that it is approved, and this data is not subject to revision. So as we scroll down, you can see that the E disappears here on February 14th, which means that the ice went out and that we are okay with those values there as not being ice affected. So that's just something I wanted to show you on that. Go back to the station page. So up here, we have daily statistics, monthly statistics, annual statistics, peak stream flow. I'll just show you one thing on the annual statistics here real quick. Okay, we're waiting for it here again. So for retrieving annual statistics, if you just leave it alone, it will use all the data that's available for this site. So right now it's showing that we're going to get a table of the annual mean. So we're going to just submit that. If we wanted to do this as an export, we would hit this button here that says tab separated data. We can save it to a file. We could display it in a browser, or you could save it to a compressed file if there was a site that had a lot of data. I'll just show you what the annual statistics look like. Oh, I must have forgot to hit a button. Oh yeah, you have to select which parameter you want to select there. I didn't do that. So we want to do it for discharge, and we'll get a table of the annual mean. I apologize for this being so slow. Usually it's not this slow. Okay, so here we go. So for the years of data that we have available for this site, which is from water year 1969 through the present, you can get the mean annual discharge for this site. So you can see, you know, there's quite a bit of variation from year to year, mainly because this is a snowmelt dominated site. So if you have a big snowpack year, you're going to get a lot more runoff than if you have a small snowpack year. Also, this site is below regulation, so you know, if they're filling a reservoir or not, it will impact the mean annual discharge. So that's another thing to mention, is that it's important to know the site and what's going on upstream of the site. Some of the other things, and the monthly statistics are the same and the daily are the same, so you could get mean daily flows for, you know, July 1st, you know, what the mean is for that year. Water quality field samples. So, well, let's start up here. So the peak Streamflow file for this site. So every year we will go in once we approve the data, and we will determine what the peak Streamflow was for that site for the year. And peaks are important for doing flood flow recurrence interval work. So if you want to determine what the 100-year event is for the site, or we're trying to get away from calling it a 100-year event just because people, you know, think that, you know, a 100-year event only occurs, you know, it occurred 5 years ago, so it's not going to happen again for another 95 years. We're going to the terminology of excuse me, annual or exceedance probabilities. So a 100-year event has a 1% chance of occurring every year. So you need the peak flow events for the historical period of record for the site to run through the equation, and then I can show you, if you're interested in how you use this. There's a program the Usgs has called PeakFQ that will do those calculations for you. But so these are all the peak flow events at this site. You can get this as a table, and you can see this PeakFQ Watt store format. So that's the format that you can output it in, that will read into that the PeakFQ program. You can also get this in a table that will show, you know, all the peak flow events that happened at this site. So the peak for last year, for water year 2010, was 346 CFS, and a gauge height associated with that is 6.11 feet. There's a code associated with it, that 6, which means that this discharge is affected by regulation or diversion. You can see some of the other codes here that are associated with those peak flow values. The next one down is field measurements. So every time we go out and we have that little red star on the hydrograph, that means that we made a discharge measurement at the site. Well, you can go and you can see information about that discharge measurement by selecting that from the drop-down menu. So the last measurement that we made at this site was on April 7th, about 1:40 in the afternoon. It was the 462nd measurement that we've made at this site throughout its history. It gives the initials of who made that measurement, what the stream flow, what they measured, the gauge height associated with that measurement, what rating we're using, and the shift. I'm not going to go into, you know, how we calculate it, but the shift is what we use to adjust our stage discharge relationship to be as accurate as possible. You know, stations or conditions at a gauge change frequently, you know, channel conditions, so our stage discharge relationship is kind of always changing, and we apply these corrections to get the best discharge possible that we can calculate. We give the percent difference from the rating, the gauge height, how much of a change there was during the measurement, which kind of lets you know how fast the water was changing, how long it took to do the measurement, what the measurement was rated. We rate measurements excellent, good, fair, and poor. Excellent means that the value is within 3% of the real value. Good means it's within 5%. Fair means it's within 8%. Poor means it's greater than 8%. Some of the things that go into rating a measurement are, how much the stage changed during the measurement, how uniform the velocity distribution was at the site during the measurement. Several other factors kind of go into it, and then it's a qualitative estimate of how good the measurement was. It gives you an idea of the control conditions. Here it was clear. If there was algae or some of these ones down here, this LGDB means light debris on the control, so there might have been a tree or something on the control. And that's some information. You can also get this data with the channel data. So I will select that. And what that's going to do, that's going to give you some more information about the measurement itself. So you can see that the table got bigger for us. Some people are interested in, researchers or whatever, and maybe going back through time and looking how the channel might have changed. So they're interested in like this channel width or the area, the mean velocity during this measurement. This is all data that we collect when we're out there, and it's available on our database here. I'm going to turn my phone off here. I keep getting my calls. Okay, so that's the field measurements. Water quality and lab samples. Go for that here. So you can see that we have, for this site in particular, we have 292 water quality samples that have been collected between 1948 and the present. If you're interested in seeing those, what you can do is you go right here to select a table of data, and then we will just hit, we want an inventory of the water quality data. All right, we'll just go to the table of data and submit. What that's going to do, that's going to go into our database and pull out all the water quality data that we have available for this site. So back in 1948, somebody went out there and collected a water quality sample. They measured the specific inductance was 649 microsiemens per cubic centimeter, some basic water quality parameters, and so all that data is available here in our web page. You can see throughout time the type of analysis that was done varies. Sometimes have more, some samples have more data available for them than others. So if there was a particular analysis you were looking for, you could go and retrieve that data from the table based upon certain parameter codes that you were interested in. Let's say you were just wanting to know what the uranium values were at this site throughout time. You could look up what the parameter code for uranium is and just pull a table that only had the uranium values. And there's I'll show you how you can, there's a tutorial you can go through that shows you how to do retrievals from the database. So that's the field and lab samples. The Instantaneous Data Archive that I mentioned earlier that has the 15-minute values, you can access that from this site here as well, from the station page. So if we just click Instantaneous Data Archive. So for this site here, now the instantaneous data only goes back to when we really kind of started recording data electronically, which for most sites was in the mid-1980s. Before that, things were all on paper charts and are not available electronically. So if we were interested in this site in finding instantaneous data, let's say there was a flood event or something that happened in the summer of 2009, so say 2009, 07, 01, and to 2009, 07, 02. And we want to display this in the browser. So what this shows is that they have 15-minute data for discharge for that site. So here's the site name, and there's a description. All this text file above is a description of what this data is, but it's the site number, the time, and this value right here is the discharge. So at midnight on July 7th or July 1st, 2009, the discharge was 108 CFS. And as you go through time, you can see every 15 minutes we have that value available. So that's the IDA, the Individual Data Archive, or Instantaneous Data Archive. Now, the other thing we have is the annual water data report. So the USGS used to publish, like I mentioned earlier, the big annual water data report for a state. And in that report, it had a page, well, it had several pages that, well, we no longer publish paper copies of that report. That report is all distributed via PDFs now, and that's what this is that we're looking at here. So you can see for this site, it gives you the information on it, which was also available, as I showed earlier, on the station page under the station information. It gives you remarks about the record or about the site, the extremes for the period of record. So for this site, the maximum discharge of 2,870 occurred on August 15th, 2003, which again, you could get that from the peak flow file that I showed you earlier. Extremes for this year, it gives you the daily value table, which again, I showed you earlier, you could also retrieve electronically. This is the approved data, and again, you can see the E's on here for the period of ice record or equipment malfunction or whatever. It gives you a summation, some statistical summaries down here at the bottom. It gives you some more summary statistics that gives you a hydrograph for the year. So really what this is kind of a, well, it used to be a paper copy of what was available in the database. Now it's kind of a PDF summary of what happened at that site for that year. And that, again, that's called the Annual Water Data Report. So really, there's this EPA Surf Your Watershed site. I've really never been to that. This internal one here is not available to the general user. That's just available to us here within the USGS network. So are there any questions on what's available here on what we call the station page? I know I covered a lot of stuff, and it's tough to keep track of all this stuff and how you get through it.
Question
I guess
for you.
the moral of the story is there's a lot of data available. So, was there a question?
Yes, it was. Is there any data regarding or any tables developed for return frequency that are updated on a regular basis, whether it be the flood flows or whether it be the 90% exceedance flows?
Yeah, I'll you know, there really aren't any that are produced and regularly updated. That Peak FQ program is what's available to kind of do that on your own, because really there's a lot of, well, not a lot, but there is some analysis that goes into that equation. You have to be able to, you know the site and determine whether it's appropriate to do an analysis like that. This site that we've been looking at here is affected by regulation, and so it's really not appropriate to do a peak flow recurrence interval on a site like this. But I can show you some other stuff that's calculated here, and I'll get to that here in just a second. Now, I'm just going back to our main station page here. So really this data center along the left-hand side here, we actually covered quite a bit of this stuff already. That annual water data report that I talked about is, you can access that right here. The Instantaneous Data Archive is available right here. I'll just show you the historical data, so like the annual tables that I showed you from the station page. So again, like I said earlier, there's probably 3 or 4 ways to get to the same data. It's just, what you get used to using. I think for somebody that has a favorite station or 2 or 10 that they're interested in, going to that station page and, using that drop-down menu to access the other information is probably the most straightforward. I'll just pull up one of the annual water data report pages here. So if you didn't know what site you were interested in, you were just wanting to know if there was something in an area, you can use this water data report mapper. So if you click on that, what that's going to do, it's going to pull up a map of the United States, and all those little black dots on there are sites that we have an annual water data report page for. So you just kind of zoom in until you get close enough. Selectable. So we'll just select this one right here. It's going to give you, this is Chalk Creek at Colville. You can download the PDF. And again, it's just the annual water data report page for that site. If I had to guess, I would say that the annual water data reports, the PDFs that we have there, will most likely probably not be around maybe 10 years from now. Just as people get more used to using the database, all that information, like I said, is available in the database. It's just not collected in a PDF. So I guess we'll see what the future of that is. The Instantaneous Data Archive. Again, if you weren't sure what station you were interested in, you could go to it. You can go to, this gives a drop-down menu for all the sites in Utah. If you were in it for whichever state you're in, you'd be able to get it up. So these are all the sites in Utah that we have that instantaneous data available for. You can select the site you're interested in and go and retrieve the data as I showed earlier. There's just a couple of things here before we get to some of the other frequency or recurrence interval stuff. There's another tool here that's called NWIS Mapper, and I'll just run through NWIS Mapper with you real quick. You select that. What that's going to do, this is another way to access the data, but kind of a more graphical way of doing it. So if you weren't sure what you were interested in, you could come to this NWIS Mapper if you just knew there was a certain area you wanted to find out data for. You can go to the NWIS Mapper, pull up a map of the United States, zoom in to the area of interest. And again, what this is showing, all these solid triangles here are locations that we have some sort of data available for. So let's go out here to the Strawberry Reservoir. We'll zoom in here around Duchesne. Once you zoom in enough that those closed triangles become open triangles, then they become selectable. So we can get on that. And so this is Rocky Point Canal at State Route 87 at Duchesne, Utah. So we want to access the data. Let's say we want to know what data is available for that site. Well, that one, we only have field and water quality samples. We have 5 of them that were collected in 1972 and 1973. Maybe that's useful to you, maybe it's not. But, you can just kind of keep moving along here, and it will fill in. And then the Duchesne at Gray Mountain, you can access the data for that site. And again, we have some more water quality samples. If we were interested in groundwater, on the left-hand side here, it shows, you can select what information you're interested in. We'll select groundwater sites. We'll turn off the surface water, and we move it a little bit here, and it should refresh itself. Hit the refresh button. So if we're interested in groundwater, so those are all the groundwater sites available throughout the country. You can see it looks like just one big red mass. As you zoom in, all that red turns into individual red circles. And then again, you zoom in more. This is the old Pony Express Road. Goes out through the West Desert of Utah. And you can select on that. It gives you the well, the USGS well site number and the site name. We can access the data for that site. And for this particular site, it's in our database, but we don't have any water level or any other information available for this site. So it says that there's no data available online. See if we can find one that we do have some data available online. Go out here. Okay, so here's one. This is actually the one well that we have in Utah that's a real-time well. You know, it says we have real-time data available, we have daily data, water level measurements, the annual water data report, and then groundwater watch, which is similar to water watch. So for this site here, we can click real-time, and there's the real-time water level for this site, you know, for the last week. Again, that's the NWIS mapper. You can also get springs. If we select springs, they're, you know, these are all the springs that we have listed in our database. And again, you can zoom in until they become open circles and then get information on those springs. Any questions on NWIS mapper? Okay, I'll go on to, anybody on the phone, like an engineer or interested in doing like culvert design or anything like that?
We do that on occasion.
Okay. Well, then this tool is pretty useful. It's called StreamStats. It's a national application. Well, eventually it'll be a national application. It's being implemented on kind of a state-by-state basis, and some states are further ahead than others. But if you just type StreamStats, you know, do a Google search on it, you'll find the USGS StreamStats application. And this gives you some information on it. We can click on state applications here. And this gives you a map of where everybody's at. If it's green, that means it's fully implemented and you can use the tool. If it's blue, it's undergoing implementation, and so on and so forth. So I'll just give you a little demonstration of the tool here. What it is, it's a map-based tool that allows you to go in and select a point, and it will give you some of the flow statistics, peak flow statistics for that site. So if you were doing a bridge design or something and you know you needed to find out what the 500-year recurrence interval is for that site at an ungauged site, it will go and calculate it for you. If you've ever done this by hand, which, you know, when I was in college, I had to go and delineate these basins by hand and calculate all the variables that go into the equation by hand, you will appreciate how nice this tool is. So what it is, it's an interactive map. So we're going to click on this map, interactive map button here. Excuse me. And it's going to pull up, in this case, a map of Utah. You can see it's kind of a GIS. It's based on a GIS processor in the background. So you can see there's lots of tools up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in to a point that we're interested in. And I just zoomed in by using the zoom in tool there in the upper left. And once you zoom in enough, you'll see that the streams here become pixelated streams. So let's say we wanted to put a footbridge in or something over the stream. And we wanted to make sure that we got it in high enough to handle some of the flows. And we don't have a gauge at this site. So, we can select any of these pixels along here to do the analysis on. So what we want to do, we want to delineate a watershed from a point. So we're going to use this watershed delineation tool. Let's say we wanted to put a bridge in, right here. So now behind the scenes, there's a GIS computer cranking away. It's going to go in and delineate the basin upstream of that point. There you go. So there's the basin upstream from that point. We can get statistics, so we will get the basin characteristics by selecting that tool. And these are the statistics that it can compute. It can compute mean basin elevation, area, so on and so forth, all the way down. So we're going to have it compute the parameters. It's going through and cranking away. There you go. So the mean basin elevation for this site is 9,820 feet. It's a 12.1 square mile area. The percent covered in herbaceous upland plants, percent covered by forest, mean annual precip, average basin slope, etc., etc. These are all stuff that go into the regression equation that was developed for this area to determine the peak flow statistics. So now we'll estimate the flows using the regression equation. So all we're going to do is we're going to select that button there. It will go through and use all those parameters, and boom, that fast, we have our peak stream flow statistics. So the 500-year event for this site, based upon the regression equations, is 582 CFS. There's large errors associated with these regression equations. You can see that the prediction error is 43%. But again, for a site that doesn't have a stream gauge at it, this is a pretty good first crack at determining, a bridge design, or how big a culvert would need to be, or anything like that. And so you can see we went and did that whole analysis here in maybe 2 or 3 minutes. In college, I think it probably would have taken 3 of us, a couple of days to do that, because you have to go in and delineate all those different variables that go into the equation. And there are some other tools, and they're always adding tools to this statistic. There's some of these tools you can trace a flow path within the watershed and it'll show a profile. So if we go like that, right. Yeah, so from that point I selected to the outlet of that basin, it gives you a profile. And there's some other tools available as well. Any questions on stream stats? That's just a very, very brief introduction to that. Okay.
I just want to say that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. Especially if you've ever done that by hand, you really appreciate how useful that tool is. And it's good. Like I said, you can do a quick analysis on several sites and determine where you might want to put a bridge or whatever. Okay. Let's see. So we've been going at this about an hour now. I've covered most of the high points of everything. There is this, I'll show you this active water level network page here thing. So this is a groundwater product here. So, I showed you waterwatch.usgs.gov at the beginning. There's also groundwaterwatch.usgs.gov. And again, it kind of shows you what's going on with water levels kind of on a national picture. And here you can really see which states, we have a lot of groundwater information for. You can see Nebraska here is pretty well covered. Florida's pretty well covered. Utah, at least the western part of Utah, is in pretty good shape. So if you select on your state of interest, what it does is it pulls up a map of what we call our active water level wells. So if we've made a water level measurement within the last year, that well will show up on this map. In the NWIS mapper that I showed you earlier, you could remember how everything was kind of covered in red circles. Well, a lot of those wells, are maybe they were only visited once, back in 1950, or maybe the well was inventoried but never measured or anything. These wells here are the ones that we actually, have probably a pretty long period of record on. So let's...
Hey, Cory?
Yes.
I got a question about all these groundwater wells. Is there a database that has the soil boring information that went along with those, or are these all just strictly drilled with wells installed?
Yeah, some of the wells do have lithologic information associated with them, but by far the vast majority do not. So if there was and that information would be available in the database. So if there was an area that you were interested in, I would say the best thing to do is to go to the NWIS mapper, zoom in on that area, and select a couple of wells around there, and just look at what data is available for that well and see if the lithologic information's in there. But for the vast majority of sites, they aren't entered into the database. That doesn't mean that we don't have them in paper copies. At least here in Utah, every time a new well is drilled, the state gets a copy of the well driller's report, and they send a copy of that well driller's report to us as well. So we have a big room full of file cabinets that have all that well driller information in it. So if there is a well that you're interested in, I would suggest you contact the USGS office or the state that you're in, and see if a paper copy of that information is available, because it probably is. Might not be electronic, but there's probably a paper copy available. Does that help?
Yeah. Sometimes you're trying to get some kind of an idea what soils are like in an area, and we know that USGS has wells out there, so it's nice to at a preliminary screening level for an area to see if there's anything available.
Yeah, exactly. So just to get back what we were doing here, if you click on an area, you can kind of zoom in, and then you can select an individual well. Oh, there's even a... So this is a well that we have continuous data on. So you can see we have data on this site going back to 1978. So this is kind of the station page for a groundwater well. What stuff we were looking at earlier was a station page for a surface water gauge. So this is what a groundwater page looks like. Again, you can see we have the annual data report link right there, water level measurements. If there is any water quality data available for this site, it would show up on there as well. It kind of gives you a summary of statistics. So you can see for this site, we're running in the bottom percentile of historical water levels. You can see the black triangles here are the long-term mean, and we're down in the bottom 10%. I selected this well. It's kind of out in an area of groundwater overdraft, so you would expect the more recent stuff to be running low. Here's the long time plot. You can kind of see it diving down. Again, blue means that it's approved. Red means that it's provisional for this site, and so on. You can get, just like with the surface water measurements, you can get the field groundwater level measurements. Again, that's plot. You can get this as a table. You can get it as a tab separated table, whatever you want. So So the last time this well was measured was, see, we have a lot of measurements on this site, was March 22nd. So we measured that one not too long ago. Okay, so that kind of covers surface water and groundwater. I touched on the water quality a little bit. Touched on water alert. Are there any other questions? Did I cover anything or not cover anything that somebody's interested in getting?
Just a question about the more frequent, like the 90% exceedance flows. Is that something also that that program would calculate?
Yeah. Let me, so if we go to waterwatch.usgs.gov, and go to, it's like, oh, there's one other thing I wanted to show you here too. So if you go to the Water Watch page, you know, you can see this kind of looks similar to the page that's on the front of the, you know, the Utah USGS page. If you select one of these sites here, on this one, it kind of pulls up a little bit of a different plot. So here it kind of gives you a summary of what's going on. It gives a hydrograph, a peak, a forecast, and a rating, right? So if the site that you select happens to be a National Weather Service forecast point, you can select that forecast, and unfortunately, you can see it says the hydrograph is not available temporarily for this station. So what it does is it goes in and it goes into the National Weather Service River Forecast Center for that site and pulls up their forecast for this point. And lately we've been experiencing some issues with going to the Weather Service page and pulling that data back and displaying it on here, which is why it gives you this hydrograph. But they're working on that, why it gives you this message. But it's being worked on and hopefully will be available here pretty soon. So you'd just be able to click on that. It also shows you a rating. I've mentioned rating here a couple of times. So what a rating is, it's a relationship between gauge height on the y-axis and discharge on the x-axis. We developed this relationship by making measurements over time, and then that's what we use within our database to calculate discharge. And I mentioned shifts earlier as well. That one measurement, you know, there was an indicated shift of 0.03. What that means is 0.03 of a foot adjustment in this line here. You can also get what's called the shift adjusted rating table, and this is useful for water management agencies or whatever that maybe they want to go out to a site and read a staff plate out there and then determine what that discharge is. If they come and they print off the shift adjusted rating table, it gives you again something just a text page that shows what the gauge height is. So here at a gauge height of 1.0, the corresponding discharge is 5.6 CFS. So if somebody had a site that they, I don't know, went by or were visiting, they could, you know, determine what the discharge is without having to look at a web page or anything. Anyway, that's just a little aside there. But to go back to the previous question about finding the peak flow information. Again, there are some, okay, I'm thinking here out loud. Let's see, where is that?
Hey, Cory, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Back on the stream stats thing, I was the one that said it was pretty cool, but I went to the North Carolina site where we are at, and it looks like it only covers the Upper French Broad near Asheville. Is that just because they haven't gotten around to the rest of that, or is that something in the works, do you know? Yeah,
you know, the way that stream stats was done, it was done on a state-by-state basis, and the funding for it was partial USGS funding for the development, and then we would get cooperators from state agencies to fund the other portion of it. In North Carolina, I'm not for sure what the funding mechanism was. Maybe they could only find somebody interested in funding that portion for right now, but they're probably looking for other funding partners to complete, other portions of it as well.
Gotcha. Okay.
In North Carolina, my counterpart is, her name is Jean Robbins. Let me just show you real quick how you can find somebody. So on the state web pages here, towards the bottom, there's always this employee directory. So if you click on employee directory, you will go through and you can see, so right here, hydrologic surveillance section, that's me, Cory Angeroth, and it has my email address and my phone number. For North Carolina, it's kind of organized the same way, except they don't have it broken out. But Jean Robbins is her name, and where's she at on there? I don't see her name. Anyway, you could always just go and just call the general office number and say you wanted to talk to somebody about stream stats, and they'll get you to the right person. All right.
Let me just ask one more dumb question.
Sure.
West Virginia was like completely white, so I'm guessing that's like nothing going on over there, huh?
That's right. Yeah. What that means is that they haven't started the implementation program on that.
Okay.
Well, yeah, that's what that means. So, if you're interested in doing it, call the office there and ask to talk to somebody about stream stats, and put some pressure on them. Maybe they can get it going. Or if you know somebody that's interested in that tool and would possibly be a potential funding partner, I'm sure the USGS would be willing to talk with them as well and start working on getting that implemented there. Okay. So, let's see, getting back to the peak flow or the percent exceedance calculation. I don't think that there is a place that has those values stored. Or if there is, I can't think of it right now. For some reason, I think that was done once. Somebody went through and did it for the entire United States and then had it as a web page somewhere. And I thought it was under this Water Watch, but I'm not seeing it right here. Flood. Yeah. There's these duration hydrographs. I can show you that real quick. So for that, what these show are the 7-day flows, and this site here is the Colorado at Cisco, Utah. So for water year 2010, 91805. What? That one should be there. Let's go to 2008. Unfortunately, I think in order to do the peak flow calculations, you're going to have to run the peak FQ program. And I'll show you here in just a second where you can get that program if you don't already have it. These duration hydrographs aren't going to get you what you're interested in. Whatever pulls up here. Okay. So what this shows is just for water year 2008, the Colorado at Cisco, that's the black line. And if you can see what percentile of flow it was in throughout the year, which some people think that that's a good graph looking at. Okay. So to get to calculating peak flow recurrence intervals, if you just go to water.usgs.gov, this is our national water resource. Well, it used to be the Water Resources Division. Now it's the Water Resources Discipline. This is our page. If you go up here under streams, lakes, and rivers, and reservoirs, I mean, this gives you some information on some real basic stuff, you know, what surface water, how Streamflow measured. So it provides some background information. If you go down under here, under methods and modeling, again, you can see there's the stream stats link there, and so on and so forth. And if you go down here under other surface water software, you can see that the Peak FQ program is right here. If you click on Peak FQ, it goes through and it describes you know, how you download the program. It has the different types of Windows version, DOS version, Unix version of the program, and how the program operates. So basically what you do is you just go to the site that you're interested in, download the peak flow file in that Peak FQ watt store format. Then you can read it right into Peak FQ, and it takes about 2 seconds for it to go through and do the calculations. It does the calculations based on Bulletin 17B, which I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it was an interagency committee that was done back in the early 80s to normalize the way that peak flow calculations were done. It uses log Pearson type 3 distribution in calculating those peak flows. So in those, you know, every time a new peak is added to the file, so every year that 100-year flood event changes. So it's something that would have to be done using the most up-to-date data to give you a real good number. There is Bulletin 17B is being redone right now, but since it's an interagency thing, it'll probably be at least a couple years until Bulletin 17C comes out. Until that time, 17B is the method that should be being used for determining those statistics. So that probably didn't help you all that much. Basically what it comes down to is you have to go and do the analysis yourself.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, sorry about that. Like I said, I thought somebody had gone and done that for all the gauges in the U.S. and I thought there was a web page. I think it was a researcher or something that had done it, probably doing some paper or something and put it up there. But again, you know, they go out of date every year, so maybe he pulled it down or something. Any other questions or comments or anything? Again, I covered a lot of territory on this. Excuse me, and so I know it's kind of tough to keep up, but if you ever have any questions or anything, or if you're looking for something, feel free to contact me, and I can get you in touch with the person in your state or whatever that you should be talking with. If you can't figure it out from the state web page or whatever, feel free to give me a call and I'll point you in the right direction.
Thank you, Cory.
All right, any other questions or anything? No? All right. Well, there you go.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, especially Cory. And River Network, as I said at the beginning, we are exploring webinars as a new tool for the groups we work with. And if you have topics that you would like for us to cover, please do let me know. I'll be sending out a link to a survey fairly soon here, and any feedback that you could provide would be greatly appreciated.
Thanks, Catherine. Thanks, Cory.
Yep, thanks.
All right, no problem. Thanks.
Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.